4:01, before we went to break, before Alfred took us out, and forgive me, everybody, this is Be Lifted Up. Okay, but listen, did you hear what Dr. Steele said about one Black woman justice won an election, or I'm sorry, lost because of 401 people did not show up? You know what? I'm just still stuck on that. And so let me just come out of that, because it's just so disappointing. In fact, we'll hand this back to you, Dr. Steele, but part of, I think, where there needs to be a bridge is, there was a time where politics was the role and responsibility of a certain group of people. And others of us, like Alfred and myself, I spent most of my career on Wall Street before I started my company. Alfred, senior vice president over at Black Enterprise. So our work was not necessarily the work of, you know where I'm going with this? We weren't really assigned a task to advocate for justice in any way. And so we were really not engaged. And I think there's a big gap and a big need for those of us whose primary role and responsibility has nothing to do with elections and civic engagement and mobilizing people. I think we are now all responsible, all hands on deck. We need professionals, because 401 people, if I lived in North Carolina, I'm taking it personal that that's my responsibility. D, if you did something and she lost, okay, well, you did something. But if she lost and you did nothing, D. Marshall, listen, shame on you as a leader. Shame on you, DC Marshall, as church, okay? Because what we do is we celebrate our personal wins and victories. Yes. But baby, yes. Look, listen, everything is at stake. Our grandbabies' lives are at stake. Our voting rights are at stake. It all has a, bottom up, top down. So anyway, I just get super passionate about this. And this isn't even my primary work, but I thank God that he stirred up something on the inside of me that I could not have the access, the platform, the insight. I could not have mentors like a Dr. Barbara Williams Skinner or Dr. DeForest Story and sit by idle and just shout and lift up my hands and look cute at church. Okay. Cause that's over, game over. I believe the measure and the metric of a leader right now is, what are you doing to get, if you live in North Carolina, what are you doing to get behind the new North Carolina project? Huh? I'm sorry, Dr. Steele. Alfred, bring us back. Bring us in, reel us in.
I'm never going to reel you in, because you are right. You are right. You are right. You are right. You can stop there. You are right. 401. And Dr. Steele, you talked about all those people who were registered to vote. I know you're talking about people who weren't registered, that could have been, but the people who were registered and didn't, again, yeah. that's as graphic.
At church and at work with red bottoms on and expensive bags. I'm sorry, Lord, we're gonna lose some listeners. We're gonna lose some people. God cover me. Nice hand driving big cars, okay? I'm sorry, Dr. Steele, bring us back. The floor is yours, Dr. Steele.
Yeah, and talk about the big win, and at least in terms of the battle over redistricting that also happened in North Carolina. Yeah. And then I also want you to talk about this bigger mission, which is addressing everything that Dee is really excited about and energized about the goal of creating lifelong voters. And how are you going about that? Because I think there are people in other states, other communities that also can learn from that.
Absolutely. So Dee, you're right on the money. That 401, it hurts so bad. And that was after the recount. I mean, it hurts so bad. So, again, I have personal friends who were impacted by their kids not being tried as an adult, who were so thankful that that law passed under our previous Chief Justice. These are the types of stories that if people don't connect with why it's so important to get involved in your local politics, in your school board, et cetera, if they don't make that connection, then we're going to keep fighting a fight, not really understanding how to fix the root of the issue. One such root or thing, and I'll move on to what you asked me to speak about, is this whole thing about curriculum and CRT and critical race theory and all of these things. We did a deep dive into the social studies curriculum of North Carolina. So my PhD is in curriculum and instruction with a focus on urban education. So I love curriculum. And after we dove into the curriculum, we actually started to understand that the North Carolina School Board already embedded curriculum changes that forced the teachers to really teach about Black history all year long, not just in February, but then not just Black history, other cultures and their history embedded in the curriculum. First time ever that it's looked like that. And that's something that, even though we see this kind of massive organization around school board meetings, which is why it's important to go to your kids' school boards meeting, and then also show up and listen and talk for 3 minutes on any topic you want to talk about. But show up. If you're a parent, you should be speaking at a school board meeting. That is your civic obligation. But I digress, and I'll come off of that. But we have to show up and really give the counter narrative of what's going on with curriculum. And there are some positive things going on with curriculum that still allow people of color to be seen at the forefront of education. So I just want to pause and say that. Now let's get back to this kind of intersectionality of our goals as the New North Carolina Project and what we're trying to do with creating voters for forever. We want to make sure that people attach their political engagement to a personal issue, which keeps them coming back to the polls. As they come back to the polls year after year, it won't be because we have a messiah candidate who is so amazing that we just can't stay away. Whether that's, electing a senator, depending on how Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's confirmation hearings go. If it goes well, great. If it doesn't go well, we may be needing to put our senators in place in November so we can vote again. These are the types of reasons why we want people to find their reason to vote in every election. Our job is not to give it to them, because the most disrespectful thing you can do to a community, especially a community of color, especially as the oppressor, is come in and say, this is what you need to do. No. Don't tell me what we need to do. God gave me a vision. I know what my family needs to do. I know what we need to do as a community, and I know how people of color have been treated. This is what we need to do. And communities of color have to start speaking back. So we amplify the voices of people of color by knocking on those doors, making those phone calls, sending those texts. We send thousands of text messages. We knock on thousands of doors. We make thousands of phone calls. We follow in alignment with the efforts of Stacey Abrams and those amazing women in Georgia who've been doing this work for many, many years, but have not gotten the attention over the last decade that they're getting now. And one of the things that we know is that we have to all work together, but in collaboration. So that's what we do to engage our communities. We work with other groups. We are not just the only ones doing this work. There are amazing people doing this work, but we decided to come together and organize the organizers and be of help and support in bringing resources and attracting resources to the state so that we can all move forward together to amplify the voices of people of color, period.
Wow. That's what we're talking about.
Come on, Doc.
Come on with it. So where are we now? Where are you now in terms of, we got the upcoming midterms. I know your church is aligned, you and your husband, but where are you now with mobilizing and this upcoming midterm election kind of being I think a big test for how much we've learned and how far we've come over the last couple of election cycles?
So what we've been doing is really identifying holes and gaps. We've been hiring staff to help us address some of those holes and gaps in community organizing, in field organizing, which is that door knocking, campaign-esque type of work, but then also in understanding what's going on in communities. We're learning from knocking doors, talking to voters, and doing that direct voter contact and registering voters. We're learning what's important to people and then helping to amplify those messages so that we can get people to really understand why it's so important to vote. So it's kind of this cyclical cycle of action that we're engaging in. I started this work in January of 2021, just listening. 2 months later, I decided to start the organization. God clearly said to me, organize them. I had no idea what that meant. And when God talks, he does not provide a ton of details. You just have to go with it, and you go through the first door, as cloudy as it is, and then he'll give you all the other open doors. After that, we raised about $2 million. And that allowed us to go ahead and hire some staff. We're now sitting at a full-time staff of 14, and we knock, call, text, community organize every day of every week. So yes, we're preparing for a positive midterm, but we also know this work is long-term. It is not just one cycle. So we'll be here for a while by the grace of God.
Wow.
I'm so inspired. I am so inspired. I think we have to wrap. Listen, this is Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life, and we'll be right back to close out.